first, let's begin by queering up business. Could the LGBTQ plus future of gay Wilton Drive be harmed by a looming business rent crisis? Affluent and unhampered by children, or so the myth goes, LGBTQ plus city dwellers have long been at the vanguard of transforming rundown neighborhoods. They call them gayborhoods. And no gayborhood in America has been more talked about than Wilton Manors, Florida, and its famous Wilton Drive. Wilton is actually a 14,000 resident city surrounded by Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. Wilton once upon a time was run down. In the 50s and 60s, it was filled with cheap housing trailer parks. Today, it's hard to find property under 7 figures. But the real draw to Wilton is its LGBTQ plus business corridor on Wilton Drive, full of gay bars, nightclubs, galleries, restaurants, shopping, and more. Like South Beach, the Castro, the West Village before it, Wilton Manors may be seeing signs of gentrification. Many call it gaytrification. How does affordability change neighborhoods and even entire communities? While we concentrate on housing costs, it actually may be business rent that is far more telling of the coming change to Wilton Manors. One example is the 2200 block of Wilton Drive. It happened over the weekend as the beloved LGBTQ plus activist, Claudia Castillo, moved her longtime art studio to new retail space at the Gables. When asked about why the move from such a longtime address, she said, quote, "My lease was coming to an end this spring and the rent at my long-term location was going to be more than double," end quote. Castillo, an active member of the Wilton gay business community, said that many business owners are talking about significant rent increases since the pandemic. This block of Wilton Drive includes many well-known LGBTQ plus names, including Ego Bar, To the Moon Novelty and Candy Store, True Blue Clothing, restaurants like Myth Gastrobars over there, New York Grilled Cheese, and Sushi Song. South Florida Symphony Orchestra is headquartered there, as is Castelli's Real Estate. Another bar owner at a recent city meeting tried to expand an outdoor area, but nixed the plans, not because of city rules, but rather the rent would be dramatically increased because of a lease change. Is the Castillo Gallery move a larger warning of what is happening to Wilton Manors? Could significant rent increases have dramatic effects on what the LGBTQ plus embracing city represents? While Queer News Tonight has been focusing on all the new development underway, it seemed that we must also watch closely what happens to our longtime business community interests. After all, what happens now could represent a gayborhood and city that could be vastly different in the future. I gotta tell, I love Castillo. I love Claudia Castillo. I went and I called her today because we were gonna do this story, and she's bummed that she had to move, guys, right? And she told me how much her rent went up. She was nice by saying double. It's close to triple.
Oh.
Okay, of what her rent would have gone up. And just in a crazy move like that, she had to end up moving her whole entire space, and she's heartbroken, you know? I lived on South Beach when South Beach was gay. Right? When it was, there's a lot of South Beach places now that were super welcoming to us and all of that. But back in the 90s and 2000s, it was very, very gay. LGBTQ plus owned and operated businesses were very prevalent back then. It's not the case anymore, right? I remember when Johnny Rockets, when they gave the okay to Johnny Rockets to be open on Ocean Drive, everything went to shit right after. Fridays soon came after, and then 15 CVS's. Because that's what we need, is 15 mother effing CVS's, right? I fear that this will happen to Wilton Drive as well. I remember a couple months back, it's close to a year now, right? I was driving down Wilton, looking at all my gay boys waving out the window. Hey, it's Faye what? Hey. All of a sudden, I got blinded by this storefront that was freaking brighter than than the stick that I use when I do my social media post, okay? That shit was bright. It's a vape shop. Okay, and it's the biggest vape shop I've seen in life. It took the space of like 4 storefronts. Was that necessary? Is this what we're looking forward to? Is this what's going to happen to Wilton Drive, where the LGBTQ plus owned and operated spaces won't have the necessary funds to support their community? It's come to the point where Wilton Manors is unaffordable for people who go and party there. I can't afford to live in Wilton. I don't know about you guys, but now it breaks my heart even more that the businesses are also feeling that heat as well. I'm curious, you being a real estate agent in your spare time when you're not dancing and, prancing around, right? Which is none. Tell me what you think about this, Jacob.
Well, So to also go with that, thank you. I'm a real estate broker, but my specialty is in nonprofit and transitional housing for vulnerable populations. This is what I do. And I look at this as a bigger problem. When you look at what's going on, when gays move into a neighborhood, they bring up property values to make everything pretty. People want to move in, then they move in with their kids. School systems get better, and then we're outpriced of our own market. And that's happening here. We've seen it happen multiple times all around the country. But now it's not only just happening here in Wilton, it's also happening in Palm Springs, which is something I'm surprised we haven't talked about. They've actually put a kibosh on opening up Airbnbs, and this has a point, I promise, and short-term rentals and not letting licenses convey when they sell. Now, this is why this is important. Palm Springs is a huge gay mecca as well as Wilton Manor. And when they did that, they're trying to address housing affordability, but what they're really doing is sequestering LGBTQ wealth creation. They're doing the same thing here in Wilton Manor. That's because for the first time in recent history, we have a gay population that's old enough to retire that didn't get killed off by AIDS and HIV. Mm-hmm. Now that we are here, a lot of the original guard weren't prepared to retire because they didn't think they were going to be alive this long to retire. So they can't afford to live where everyone else is retiring, right? Palm Springs and Fort Lauderdale being a great example. Now, after that, you also have the other demographic, which were typically men who came out a little later, had a family. Now they have retirement, all those things that go with it. And we also understand that the majority of our LGBTQ wealth does lie within gay white men. And I do say that for a reason. They're also the ones that typically leave assets to the community to help us do things like having LGBTQ centers and other initiatives. But lately, I have seen that the powers that be that do control these funds, that do control the ability to give help to grassroots organizations that can actually do the work and keep services accessible to the communities, they focus more on rubbing elbows with each other and seeing how well they can get along with one another and how flashy and shiny they can be based on ego. It's a very common problem in our culture. Unfortunately, that ego is going to cost us our landscape. There is a smarter way of doing this, but we have to first recognize where we are politically, economically, stop dividing each other by adding more letters to this alphabet and start seeing what we actually have in common. And then start devising a plan of attack to where we can actually have our real estate, commercial and residential, be left into community land trusts, which would then be allowed to grow and keep us sustained, give us a future we can count on. Right now, and there's nothing wrong with capitalism to make a profit. I get that. But social capitalism requires a strategy. It requires people having better conversations than we are having. We are not having them whatsoever because we'd rather just look away and see who we can sleep with next or who we can blame for the problem. Here's the real issue. We are all a part of the problem until we decide to become the solution.
Preach, Jacob,
preach!
It
does not happen the other way around. We have to decide to become a part of the solution. If you would like to learn more about this, this is what we are doing at the Sherlock Holmes Foundation. We would love for you to come and get involved. SherlockHomes.org. SherlockHomes.org. Thank you.
Well, since you've taken up all the time, I guess we'll move on. No, I'm joking. No, that was, I mean, you really hit it right on the head, Jacob. I mean, again, and that also allows us to leave a legacy of some sort, you know?
Yeah.
Robert, what are you thinking? I see your brain over there moving around. I can feel it from over here.
I know that the symphony is moving out and is moving to downtown Fort Lauderdale. Their rent is going up astronomically, but they have that wonderful corner spot. We used to
Weren't you on the drive too?
We had an exhibition space on the drive for a number of years where we did our museum work. And during COVID, the landlords wouldn't give us a break, so we had to close, and that's over. We've looked at taking up other space in Wilton Manors, but it's just prohibitively expensive. And being that it's a small city, the government isn't any help at all. Even though they've tried to be in looking for spaces, but it's not readily available.
Yeah.
There is always problems when it's a small municipality, because you also have to remember that many of those people who bought their houses in the 60s and 70s are looking to use those places for their retirement fund.
Right.
And so when those places become much more valuable, they can sell that and move to a place that's less expensive to live, and therefore the amount of money they make off the sale of their home or their building or what other investments they've made is what will carry them through in later in life. So you have those conflicts, and those conflicts have always existed in the real estate market and will continue to do so. And the danger in not having multiple avenues for how to protect and preserve real estate, as well as allow for a certain increase, ends up causing huge divides within communities. Also because of tax revenue. Wilton does not provide certain things because their tax revenue is controlled by what they have, and so they want the hotel, and they want this, and they want that, because they need those revenues to provide the same services that they're providing now that become more expensive as you have to pay fire and police and all these other things more money. So it's never an easy solution, and there isn't one solution that will answer every single problem.
Correct.
But certainly it is important to have those conversations, and it is important to be serious about those conversations so that everybody is listened to, everybody is heard, and everybody has an opportunity to be part of the solution and not just be part of the problem.
It also goes to say that this is not just a real estate problem, because Claudia, I love her to death. I've gone to her store many times for business chamber
Gallery.
meetings. That's right. Sorry, her gallery for our LGBTQ chamber meetings, and I really adore her as a human being. What I also think is a huge problem is if she had more support, and this is a statement for all LGBTQ business owners on the drive, if they actually had the support that warranted their stores. In other words, if we went and actually supported local and stopped buying off of Amazon, they would be able to make the income to actually afford these rents. Now, I would love to see when people come out there wearing their Gucci belts, I love what you're wearing, not knocking that, just realize what you're wearing, but wearing their designer belts, I'd rather them go and wear something local, made with pride, with that same amount of enthusiasm as we do Louis Vuitton and we do Gucci and we do Versace. We need to be supporting LGBTQ designers and LGBTQ businesses, not just going for the convenience on our phones. We can do better by showing up for each other, showing up for our businesses and educating each other so we can actually do more together, unified.
Anything you want to add, Jay?
Well, this is an original queer piece because this is my house, Gorgeous Gucci. This is a ballroom house, the House of Gorgeous Gucci, established 2019. So I do support local, I support local, I support queer. So this ain't Gucci, this is Gorgeous Gucci, by the way.
I feel like, we all need to come together, as LGBTQ plus. We all need to support each other and come together and as one and help each other, because that's the future, I think, for us. And it's all about numbers. And all these hateful laws that are being passed all through America.
Especially here in Florida.
Very hateful, yes, exactly. And it's not just trans, they're going after all of us.
Oh, for sure.
So we have to support each other and become one. I think that is the key.
You're very wise, Miss Dana. You're very wise beyond your years.
That is it. That's
but
the
it's
key.
true. I mean, look, what Dana's saying is something simple, but it's the truth. This is an election year, right? The reality is that we have an acronym with a bunch of letters, and I disagree with Jacob in that aspect. If you want to add 25 more letters to that acronym, I will say it proudly because you deserve to be seen. If you consider yourself one of those letters, I'll add it to it, no problem, right? But that being said, we don't come together. The LGBTQ plus, every single acronym wants to do their own thing.
Exactly.
Right? And wants to, and I don't need you because I got this on my own. We don't got it on our own. None of us have it on our own. And we will not win this fight ever until that day that it happens that we all unite, which probably might not be in our freaking lifetime.
Well, actually, it could be. But back to your point, you say capitalism isn't wrong. And I always tell people capitalism isn't wrong. It's the usage. And it's usually the greed behind capitalism. And that's what we see going on in Wilton Manors. And that's what we see going on in our community. Yeah, I used it. Community, because it's the greed that goes on. It's the money. It's the pocketing. It's literally, that's what's tearing us all apart. Inflation is at all-time high.
Yeah.
Inflation
Eggs are
is not.
$8.
Inflation is almost.
I'm sorry.
It's not.
Sorry, but the
greed.
The greed is
But
at
that's
all-time
not inflation.
high. But
Okay, well, you tell that when you go to
my
Publix
paycheck.
to buy $8.
No.
You
What
tell
I'm
that to
saying
my
is,
bank
if you look at the numbers, historically, inflation is not high. What is high is the amount that people are charging for things and pocketing the profits. That's not
And
inflation.
also our salaries have not increased in the last 20 years.
But
so
that's also-
how do we not call that inflation?
Because-
How do we not say that we are in the same predicament that we have been in? I've been getting paid the same shit I've been getting paid since 2003, but yet the prices are higher, and this is an inflation just because of the way the economic data shows. No, ma'am. My pockets and the way my household sits is inflation, because now I'm sitting at home most of the time trying to hold on to what little I have, because eggs are $9 fucking.